Sometimes you just want to get caught up in the moment. A world record crowd, an all-time great hacker, a pop star who didn't force the game to be moved across the country so they could have a little sing-song, and an occasion to match as the Wallaroos ran out an incredible first 20 minutes, looking set to pip their biggest rivals for the first time ever in 22 attempts on the grandest occasion the two teams had ever seen in those games. All before the woman of the hour, the face of this World Cup, everyone's favourite, pulled her team up and helped the Black Ferns to a comprehensive win. If this is the kind of occasion Rugby World Cup 2020, whatever it is going to provide, sign us all up for so much more. So, how did New Zealand get off to that flying start after this stuttering start? And did Australia give us anything that either England, France or Canada, or Wales and Scotland more immediately, can exploit or should be particularly worried about? Because that was a pretty exceptional opening by Australia. It all begins here, just 1 minute into the game, when presented with a perfect opportunity to attack. Australia launched a set of phases that led to us all starting to wonder, what if? This is such a clean start to the attack. Shani Williams is just wanting to get on the inside of Kendra Coxedge to scrum half in order to take the Kiwi flankers out of the game. She does that really successfully and crashes over the gain line. Coxedge ineffective in the tackle. Parry hits the breakdown, but the rest of the Wallaroos pack split into two groups of three, plus Chancellor out wide. And this is where getting the flankers out the game becomes important. With Williams' carry being so near the scrum, it's almost an obstacle for the Black Ferns pack. Check how Bremner here has to stutter around the ruck in order to get into position. Australia are targeting the transition gap, the space between the forwards and the backs and the defensive zones, the whole basically here. And all this chaos has meant McManaman is only able to just about get in position as the ball is played away, meaning she can't provide any line speed, and Duplessis also has to do the same. She has to slow down, otherwise she create a dogleg, so it gives Australia a really easy gain line carry. There's no real pressure being applied by the defence. However, whilst the Black Ferns are distracted by the pack antics, Australia slide Tarita, the winger, all the way out to the very touchline, and fullback Pilea Rasabale slots in here, a completely different defensive picture to the one New Zealand backs were expecting they were seeing before the scrum. The second pod of forwards runs great dummy lines to hold New Zealand, to prevent their forwards folding, them drifting any wider, meaning Williams can then career into the 22 once the ball gets out wide. Australia don't score from this attack, but after struggling to manipulate the Black Ferns defence from outside the 22 for the last two tests earlier this year, it was a huge statement made, and one they didn't let up after one example. Australia appear to have a 4-on-2 overlap here, but with nobody in the boot of these forwards, the space behind, they can't easily get the ball wide to isolate Portia Woodman on this wing. Woodman is wise to this though. With two front rowers in her sight, she figures Duplessis might be grateful for a tiny bit of help pulling them to ground. Partu tips the ball on to Talakai, and the two NZ backs have no trouble killing the overlap, but this comes at the expense of being on the floor and leaving the wing unmarked. Renee Holmes shoots up from the backfield to cover, allowing Batapisaga to put in a perfect box kick, resulting in a 50-22. It's a brilliant moment. New Zealand think they've shut off the line break, but it comes at the expense of 30 metres in possession. Again, here, Mackenzie hits Rasabale early and shapes to play wide. Woodman spots the threat and joins the line to shut it off. Ruthlessly, Palea Rasabale pumps the pill behind Portia to isolate Holmes, who is tackled superbly by Tarita. Chancellor follows up and wins the crucial breakdown turnover that eventually gave Australia the position to set up from for the opening try from, you guessed it, Tarita herself. For Wales and Scotland, this try has kind of got to be the most concerning part of the entire match. A position created through physicality and some lovely shape management, but even when they think they're getting a breather, Arabella Mackenzie is pulling mad shit out with extreme subtlety. The second pass to get it wide isn't the cleanest, and Tarita doesn't quite hold her depth, but it doesn't really matter. The most important thing is giving her time, a split second less, and Tarita might as well be renamed Moriarty because Holmes has her number and is all over her face. But instead here, she has time to fade slightly before the fullback gets to her, meaning she can fully extend the handoff and slide onto the outside to leg drive, power her way over the line. It's a world-class finish from the absurdly young winger. She's like 14 or something. She's like 12. She's like 12. Her second try isn't dissimilar. The forwards drawn into the maul, Mackenzie's timing here is mesmeric in its perfection. It's what I'd call a late early ball. No attempt to do anything herself, she's just shipping it on right away, but there's a tiny delay on the pass that means both Deman and Duplessis consider she might be about to do something fancy herself, and so they bite in, they focus in on her. Fredericks, frankly, does the opposite, attempting to draw two in, but she kind of just gives them time to drift, meaning Rasabali doesn't hang around. She gives it to the danger woman early, this time giving her the chance to step in against the drifting defence. Woodman scrags her, but she explodes through contact to Superman dive over the line. It's kind of remarkable. The first half an hour, the Wallaroos were simultaneously a pleasure and fearsome to watch. The pace and attacking intent evident, the talent pouring through, and crucially, they were doing the one thing that really stops this Black Ferns team from scoring, from being themselves. That is, having the ball. Because once the Ferns got that funny little weird egg thing, that little oval, in their grasp, boy were they kind of unstoppable. Wayne Smith has played around a great deal with his tactics in the game so far in charge, and recently admitted he had a master plan that he wanted to unleash with the All Blacks in 2007 once they got to the semis and final, that he now intends to pull out at some point in this tournament. He's got a bunch of plays he's been holding back from across his entire career that he's now going to unleash. And so you can't help but start to really watch the Black Ferns very closely, even from this early stage of the tournament, to try and see what trends are starting to crop up in their play. No matter which segment of the game you're watching back, no matter which passage, there's moments when New Zealand are tying Australia towards the contact area. They're trying to bring them back into the ruck. Whether it's taking short carries, throwing inside balls, picking and going. Whenever Australia aren't on the money around the fringes, the Black Ferns punish them. It's a kind of unstoppable formula. If you aren't set around the breakdown, they bully you with their massive forward pack. If you pull players in, if you move too many in tight, you find Stacey Fleuler in space throwing ridiculous offloads like this. This is silly. This is silly, Stacey Fleuler. This is silly. It's so good. Why are you being so silly? Why can't you just be a talented mortal like the rest of us? Or maybe, say, running this long succession of pick and goes in order to tie in enough defenders that two quick passes can put Ruby Tui over in the corner. This is more or less their first genuine attacking opportunity of the game. New Zealand make two good carries in a row, and no sooner than Australia set up anticipating a third does Commander Coxedge tell a forward pack to just pick, drive, pick, drive, pick, drive, pick, drive, pick, drive. Next thing you know, all 8 Australian forwards are digging their studs into their own 22-metre line. All eyes on the ruck. They're basically left with only 2 players defending each side of the pitch, and the Ferns set to punish. They sling it wide, and as Fleuler floods forward, Tui makes a lovely block here, ostensibly trying to get in support, but she just delays Williams getting to the ball carrier, meaning she can't push her towards touch, and Fleuler can stay in field. Coxedge picks to keep the pace up, waiting for a runner to offer themselves, which they inevitably do, because before the Black Ferns know it, they're onto, and then hey look, eventually over the try line, almost without any effort at all. However, whilst most of it is abjectly terrifying, I do think there's one tiny positive for Wales and Scotland, and particularly England down the road, in this performance, because whilst as all-round teams, Wales and Scotland might be behind Canada and France, the 2 teams remaining in the Black Ferns pool are probably behind only the Red Roses in this tournament for how fast they can set their defensive line, especially on kick chase. Because the Black Ferns' real biggest strength is their ability for their pace combined with the work rate of their backs to create chaos against a defence that's still slotting into shape. This try is a perfect example. Holmes hits Tui in the backfield, and seeing as there's only players in front of her and hence nobody for her to pass to, Shani Williams figures this is safe as anything to accelerate onto, to just take out Tui, to just really target her, but instead of trying to beat her, Tui just kind of embraces the challenge. She jinks around her a bit, knowing Williams will still catch her, but heads toward Fredericks, meaning the defence is now entirely disjointed because the 2 furthest forward Australians are both targeting Tui. Holmes wraps around and explodes through. Coxedge keeps the ball incredibly quick, but right as Australia make the vital shot, in the one part of their wall that is aligned properly, that is perfectly set, Tui works around and distributes. Suddenly, Australia have 2 forwards defending in the wide channel, and whilst they do get their player to ground, the scramble to make up that ground for the other forwards to get around kind of causes a level of panic. Suddenly you've got entirely forwards defending an area where you'd often have backs, and with 3 of them then on the floor, they're spread much too thin. There's 3 further players on this blind side, meaning the same number are marking 3 times the amount of space here. Demant just looks up, sees it's all props covering 15 metres, and puts her head down and takes the gap. Then links up. It's really well taken. The Black Ferns attack set shape so much quicker than the Australian D. The space in front of her, Portia Woodman just looks up, goes, "I'm world class by the way," and the ref goes, "Yeah, fair enough," and just awards the Black Ferns 5 points. I'm pretty sure that's how that finish went. Or here, Australia clear after a stressful time in the round 22, but Holmes recovers the ball, and as she begins to work in field, Kendra Coxedge has stopped on the 22 because she's spotted an opportunity for a line break and doesn't want to waste her energy by getting back on side. Pointing it out, The Black Ferns follow suit. Ruby Tui starts on the far wing, look how far away she comes from, and noticing the Wallaroos pack following Holmes towards the centre of town, switches to the far wing. She hides herself behind Demant, knowing there'll only be one chaser. Tarita has had to work so hard to catch up with her, Tui can step easily, and the Ferns get into the 22. And right on cue, Cox Edge, as she anticipated, hasn't had to travel far, so spins it away instantaneously. The Black Ferns crash it up before spreading it wide again. Tui is sent at a struggling seam, who drop it to ground just inches out, meaning it only takes one more drive to get the Black Ferns over the line for the try to kind of seal the game. It's brilliant, but both of these tries come from a player on kick chase making an individual decision instead of sticking as a line. I'm not saying Wales and Scotland are going to beat the Black Ferns, right? But they might be better equipped to hold out a couple of the tries we saw Australia start to concede in that second half, just because they're more used to holding an efficient kick chase line. And all it's going to take is coaches really drilling into them to make team decisions instead of individual ones to pull away. But at the same time, after the kind of show the Ferns put on in that second half, it's almost impossible to look beyond anything other than them coasting into at least the semi-finals to come. And I'm very excited to see where they can go and what they can do to build on this. Yet, Australia did show there's reason for the Ferns and everyone else to feel an optimism ahead of the rest of this World Cup. Really worth getting caught up in. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. That brings us to the end of week 1 of the Rugby World Cup 2021/2/whatever year. We now move on to week 2. I do want to try and cover as best I can all 12 teams at some point over the pool stage. Just try and get through everything. That's the goal, that's the idea, that's the aim. We move on to week 2, which has England-France, which has a bunch of other games. That's all very, very exciting. Italy-Canada should be great. Fiji-South Africa. There's so many really exciting games. We'll see which ones I'll cover next week as we move on through the World Cup of Rugby.
Love Triangle, every Thursday, only on Stan.
Love Triangle coming to Stan. Drew Mitchell, you making an appearance?
Perhaps. I don't know, maybe like a...
Just waiting for the phone to ring and I'll be there.
Love Pentagon or dodecahedron or something.
Does my face look like it's in the mood for shape-based jokes?
No, Roy, it does not.